You won't believe what they asked for. I was there, I heard it with my own ears, and I tell you, it froze everyone in that room solid. But to understand why their final request was so powerful, you have to understand the man who chose to listen, and the long, hard road that brought them all together. So get comfortable, hit that subscribe button because this story will remind you of the power of second chances and the incredible ways our lives can intersect, and let me take you back to the beginning. The rain was a relentless, icy curtain the night the transport bus pulled into the Grayford Correctional Facility. Inside, Marcus, Ace, Carter gripped the steering wheel, his knuckles white. The wipers thumped a monotonous rhythm, a stark contrast to the frantic beat of his heart. This was his first week on the job as a prison transport guard, a desperate move after his medical discharge from the Marines left him with a pension that couldn't cover his son Leo's asthma treatments. The uniform felt foreign, a cheap imitation of the one he'd worn with pride. He missed the structure, the camaraderie, the clear sense of purpose. Now his purpose was survival, for Leo's sake. His partner, a grizzled old-timer named O'Malley, grunted beside him. The Boone twins. Nasty pieces of work. Robbed half a dozen armored trucks. Violence is their first language. He jerked a thumb towards the back. Life sentences, the both of them. This is just a transfer. Don't get soft, Carter. In the rear of the bus, shackled hand and foot, were Jax and Eli Boone. They were mirror images of each other, tall and lean, with weathered faces and eyes that held a lifetime of hard roads and bad decisions. Jax, the older by a few minutes, had a defiant set to his jaw. Eli, however, looked hollow. His gaze was fixed on the rain-streaked window, seeing something 1,000 miles away. The transfer was routine. Paperwork was signed, the twins were processed and led to the medical wing for their intake physical. It was there, under the sterile, unforgiving fluorescent lights, that everything changed. The doctor, a man with a tired demeanor, emerged from the examination room, his face grim. "Warden needs to see you," he said to the guards escorting them, his eyes flicking towards the twins. "It's about the Boone brothers." In the warden's office, the air was thick with a strange tension. "It's Eli Boone," the warden said, steepling his fingers. "Pancreatic cancer. Advanced. The state hospital confirms it. He's got weeks, maybe less. Or to keep him here in the infirmary until the end." Jax, who had been listening with a growing storm in his eyes, exploded. "Weeks. He dies in this cage. No. You hear me? He's not dying in this hellhole." It took 2 guards to restrain him, his raw, guttural screams echoing in the tiled hallway. But it was Eli, silent and pale, who looked the most broken. The following days were a study in quiet despair. Eli faded daily, his large frame shrinking under the thin prison blankets. Jax never left his side, his fury slowly giving way to a profound, helpless grief. He read to him, talked about old rides through the desert, the sun on their backs, the freedom of the open road. Ace, assigned to infirmary duty, watched it all. He saw not the notorious criminals, but 2 brothers bound by a love that was about to be severed in the most brutal way. It reminded him of the bonds he'd forged in the desert, brothers he'd lost. It reminded him of his love for Leo. One afternoon, as Ace was making his rounds, Jax looked up from his brother's bedside. His voice was a ragged whisper, stripped of all its former bravado. "Guard. Carter, right." Ace nodded, stopping by the door. "He's not going to make it," Jax said, his eyes glistening. "And we have a final request. It's not for a last meal or to see a preacher." He took a shaky breath. "We want to feel the sun on our faces one last time. Together. Not through a window. We want to hear the birds, not the slamming of doors. We want to sit under a real sky." Ace was taken aback. "You know I can't do that. Your maximum security. It's not an escape," Jax pleaded, his voice cracking. "Look at him. He can't even stand. What's he going to do? It's just a moment. A single moment of freedom before the end. For both of us." Ace's mind raced. It was against every regulation. It was career suicide. It could mean criminal charges. He thought of Leo, of the stability this job provided. He looked at Eli, a man drowning in a system, about to take his last breath without a taste of the world he'd lost. The veteran in him, the man who had sworn an oath to protect, felt a conflict he hadn't felt since his combat days. This wasn't about rules, it was about humanity. He went to the warden. He laid out the request, arguing not as a guard, but as a human being. The warden, a pragmatic man, refused instantly. Out of the question, Carter. The liability, the publicity if it goes wrong, my answer is no. Defeated, Ace returned to the infirmary. The look of utter hopelessness on Jax's face when he delivered the news was a physical blow. That night, watching Leo sleep, his small chest rising and falling with the gentle wheeze of his asthma, Ace made a decision. He couldn't fix the world. He couldn't save Eli Boone. But he could give him one moment of grace. He was a soldier, a father, and tonight, he would be a man following his conscience. The next day, he pulled O'Malley aside. To his surprise, the old guard, after a long, hard look, didn't try to stop him. He just sighed and said, "The security camera in the south courtyard is on a loop from 2 to 2:15 for maintenance. You didn't hear it from me." It was a fragile, terrifying thread of trust. At 2:05 p.m., Ace wheeled Eli's hospital bed into the secluded south courtyard, a small, overgrown patch of grass rarely used. Jax walked beside him, his shackles removed for the moment. The sun, bright and warm after days of rain, felt like a miracle. Eli, who had been listless, slowly opened his eyes. A tear traced a path through the stubble on his cheek. For 10 minutes, there was no prison. There were no chains, no past crimes, no terminal illness. There were just two brothers, sitting in the sun. Jax held his brother's hand, talking softly about their first bikes, the feeling of the wind, the endless possibilities of the road. A small, genuine smile touched Eli's lips. It was the most peaceful, most human moment Ace had ever witnessed. They returned without incident. Eli Boone passed away 2 days later, peacefully in his sleep. The secret held. A week after the funeral, Ace was called into the warden's office, his stomach in knots. This was it. He was going to be fired, maybe arrested. But the warden just gestured to a box on his desk. "This came for you. From Jax Boone. He's being transferred to a different facility." With trembling hands, Ace opened the box. Inside was a single, worn leather wallet. Tucked inside was a faded photograph of Jax and Eli, young and smiling, astride their Harley. And there was a note, written in a shaky hand. "Carter. You gave my brother the only thing no one else could. A final memory of freedom. I saw the photo of your son on your locker. I was a thief, but I was good with numbers. We had one last score, money no one knew about, hidden away. It's yours. It's clean. Use it for your boy. Consider it a debt repaid for a moment of sun. Thank you for seeing the men we were, not just the criminals we became." Jax. Ace felt the world tilt. He reached into the wallet and found a key to a safety deposit box. When he went to the bank later, he discovered it contained over $85,000. It was enough to pay off his debts, cover years of Leo's treatments, and give them a fresh start. And that brings us back to where we started. The final request that froze everyone wasn't for a pardon or a party. It was for a moment under the sun, a simple, profound plea for a shred of dignity. And in fulfilling it, a single dad and veteran, drowning in his own struggles, found an unexpected lifeline. He learned that sometimes the bravest mission isn't on a battlefield, but in an act of quiet, rebellious mercy. And that redemption, like the sun, can find you in the darkest of places, if you're brave enough to let it in. If this story moved you, if it reminded you that hope and humanity can survive anywhere, then do me a favor, like this video, share it with someone who needs to see it, and subscribe to the channel for more stories that prove it's never too late for a second chance.